Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Friday afternoon briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Matty Fairnie from the Long Bangers podcast. Matty, thanks as always for joining us. How are you getting on?
Good, yeah. It's nearly the end of the working week, so good times coming, and no Hibs game to spoil it this weekend. So
that was my next question. How do you feel about a weekend without Hibs? I mean, it's coming off the back of 3 points for the first time this season, but still, I don't know. Is it getting to that stage of the week where you're thinking, actually, I'm going to miss the football this weekend?
Aye, to be fair, as much as I joke about it there, I wish there was a game. I hate it when we have a weekend when they Hibs. It's it normally gets like about Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No matter what the result is on the Saturday before, it gets to Tuesday or Wednesday. Start looking forward to the weekend's game, and normally by Friday, I'm like chomping at the bit to get back to see them. So it's a bit gutting not to have a game, as much as I was joking about it.
Half joking.
Yeah, I will.
So, I mean, obviously no game this weekend. It's the Premier Sports Cup up here, and obviously Hibs eliminated in the last round against Celtic. So, I mean, we can maybe just take a wee bit of time today to take stock of this first block of games, because obviously there is another international break coming up in the not too distant future. But it's, Hibs have now got a first win under their belt. It's maybe a case of, what can we take from that first block, and then what can they build on moving forward. But just before I forget, folks, you'll see at the top of the screen there, we've got a new sponsor for our YouTube channel. It's Good Vibes Giveaways, and they're proud to sponsor the Hibs Observer and offer fantastic prizes to fans of the club. Prizes change weekly and include tech and gadgets, days out, weekends away, tax-free cash, and even Oasis tickets. Get your tickets now at www.goodvibesgiveaways.com and enter for your chance to spread the good vibes. Matty, were you involved in that carnage the other week involving Oasis tickets? Did you subject yourself to
that? Sort of indirectly. My wife, my daughters, and my son were all involved. I couldn't get into the queue for Ticketmaster, so I could opted out at that point. But they got 2 tickets, so now it's a bun fight to see who goes. It's like the Tuesday night, which is my son's birthday, so I think he'll definitely have dibs on a ticket.
That's a strong claim, yeah.
That's a strong claim. And then who knows for the other one? Like I'm no that fuss. I've seen them loads of times. Yeah. I would quite like to go again, especially you get that fear of missing out as it gets closer. So,
well, that's exactly what I've got. I spent a really quite undignified amount of time on the Ticketmaster website that day, all for absolutely nothing. So yeah, it is a serious fear of missing out. Actually, the last time they played Murrayfield, I think it was about 2009. I passed on that. I think I'd spent my money on tickets to something else, and my thought process at the time is, but I'll see them the next time they come up. They'll be back soon. And then I was 15 years later getting kicked off the Ticketmaster website because they thought I was a bot. It was all quite unedified. And then there's a long time to go, so we might get there yet. But yeah, as I said, folks, Good Vibes Giveaways, that's our new sponsor for the podcast and the YouTube channel. So do check them out. There's some great stuff on there. So moving on to All Matters Hibs then, as we said, we're going to just have maybe a wee look back at this first block of the season. Maybe touch on first on the positives, which was last weekend's game against St Johnstone. 3 points on the board. I think you quite safely predicted, Matty, that it wasn't going to be a classic, and it certainly wasn't. But I mean, were you happy just get that 3 points on the board, take it from there? Basically,
I thought like the first half was typical Hibs St Johnstone fare. And it was Craig Levein after the game talking about how he thought St Johnstone had played well in that first half, which I thought probably reflected what he had set out to do, which was just stop the game from really developing into anything resembling a football match. But because we got the goal at half time, St Johnstone opened up. In the second half, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought Hibs were really good. And we were a wee bit unlucky not to score, maybe like 4 or 5 goals in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the second half was much better, wasn't it? The first half was, I think, until the goal, it was almost a complete non-event, really, wasn't it? I think Hibs maybe struggling to hit a stride in terms of building up and breaking down through St Johnstone, and St Johnstone kind of happy to soak that up. But obviously, the goal on the cusp of half-time changes matters. They have to open up, and it created a bit more space. I mean, that has been a wee bit of a theme so far. I mean, even in the games that Hibs have lost, like being better in the second half seems to have it's kind of been a trend so far. Have you felt that?
Yeah, we were talking a wee bit about that last night when we did our own phone in, and I'd love to know like how David Gray gets to the bottom of it, because it's definitely been a feature. I think even when you go back to the Dundee game, which was really seen as an opportunity for Hibs to kick on. We'd just come off the back of the two Celtic games and Dundee at home, and you're thinking, right, let's see the team come flying out the traps. And we really did. We really didn't. Dundee had the better of the first half in that game, and it wasn't until the second half when Hibs got going. I would say the same at the Kilmarnock game as well. It was a slow first half, better second half, and definitely against St Johnstone. So it's I suppose it gives David Gray something they can work on. There's an easy opportunity to improve, because if we can start scoring more goals earlier in the game, then the risk of sort of those late concessions that we have being guilty of become less impactful. We could probably afford to chuck a goal in the 90th minute and they'll lose the game.
I mean, it's a hard thing, I suppose, to put your finger on, as you said there. But I mean, is there any reasons in your mind as to why you think it might be the case? Is it a confidence thing? Is it down to setup? Is it the opposition?
Well, I was thinking about it, and I don't know if there's a case of let's make sure we're in the game going into the second half. So we don't commit, or we didn't appear to commit too many men forward. It was definitely a feature against Dundee, and again on Saturday against St Johnstone. We attacked, but it wasn't like all-out attack. Whereas if you compare it to the second half, and when the game had opened up, we were flooding forward. We had the pace on the flanks and getting in behind kind of fairly regularly. So I don't know if it is like a sort of tactical approach, just to say, let's make sure we're not behind going into half-time, and then second half we'll bring on the big guns and try and win the game.
Yeah, well, and that was a feature as well when you talk about bringing on the big guns. There is, I think, certainly a fair bit of depth now in that forward line. Obviously, Dwight Gale coming in after the transfer window closed. You've seen Junior Hoylett making his debut, Ellie Yuan back involved. I think even without Kieran Bow, who we know is going to be out for 4 months, there's decent options there. And I suppose that's, I mean, you compare it to the first game of the season, you go back even further. I mean, how many times did we sit last year and look at how Hibs were unable really to affect the game positively from the bench? It was, you were kind of looking at, I felt more often not that subs sometimes had more had a detrimental effect on the team rather than being able to bring something different. But do you have a bit more confidence now with I mean, obviously we need to wait and see, how certain guys, how, the signing in terms of performance is going to work out. But just in terms of on paper, just basic numbers of guys that you have available in the forward area, do you feel a bit more confident about that now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was maybe after the Dundee game, David Gray had talked about short-term pain for long-term gain, and he was sort of referring to the fact that we had players coming back that weren't available just yet, or he wasn't able to sort of risk playing them just yet. And I think on Saturday we saw what the squad looks like when those players are available and the options that they give him. And it definitely looked better in the second half. Bringing on Hoylett was a game changer. I thought he was really good, really impressive, much better than I was expecting. But even being able to drop Martin Boyle, who has been up to this point undroppable, not necessarily just because he's been playing great, but because there's been nobody else to pick up his spot. But having Boyle and Hoylett come off the bench totally impacted the game so positively and made us a much bigger threat. And having those options and that strength and depth is going to be massive, I think.
Yeah, Hoylett looks like a really intelligent player, doesn't he? He just picks up nice areas, nice touches. I think he's one of those guys who makes other people around him look better as well with the way he brings them into the game, doesn't he?
Yeah, his communication was really good. He paid a lot of attention to him on Saturday, particularly when he switched over to the left-hand side, because it was on the same side of the pitch as where I sit. And you could hear him talking to other players and sort of coaching them through the game. But he was always looking for the ball, always showing for it. And I think we've missed having players like that are, giving the ball and make something happen. For a wee bit, we've had players that sort of play within themselves a wee bit for a large part of the season so far. So having somebody setting that example and driving us forward, but then coaxing other people to do a bit better as well was good. I thought he looked like a player that had played at a very high level for a very long time.
Yeah, he's certainly been around the block a few times, hasn't he? But I suppose the hope is then if he is taking responsibility, then that rubs off on other people as well. Because I think, as you said, there can be. I mean, sometimes I think we've seen maybe at Easter Road in particular kind of tentativeness around some players, but if you've got a guy who is, is setting that example, then it can almost bring other folk with him, I suppose, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the characteristics that David Gray and Malcolm Mackay were looking to bring into the team this season. They talked a lot about it early doors, about that leadership sort of characteristic. They talk about Boyle having a leadership effect, and Newell getting the captaincy, and Hora and Ekpiteta being leaders on the pitch, and I think we maybe starting to see a bit more of that shining through now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, long may that continue. So, I suppose if we can take this first block of games as a whole, obviously it started poorly away at St Mirren, but it's, I suppose, it's sometimes hard to judge when there's two games against Celtic in there because they are massive outliers in terms of what you would generally face week to week. But I mean, are you satisfied that there has been, David Gray certainly, he feels that there's been progression in every single game. Do you feel that Hibs are now starting to look in a better place? I mean, certainly compared to that first day of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose even at the first game of the season, first half against St Mirren, we were all right. Like, it wasn't we were awful. The second half was awful, but first half we were decent. Ironically, given what we spoke about earlier, but since, I think it has been steady progression. I think the good thing about getting the win on Saturday was David Gray was able to shift that narrative from haven't won a game yet to that's us 3 unbeaten, which is a much more positive spin. And then if you take like the Kilmarnock and the Dundee games, we really should have won those. I think we were the better team in both games. We gave away late goals in both games, and I think had we not done that, and it's like an obvious thing to say, but the season takes on a totally different complexion. You're sitting up near the top of the table talking about how good a job we've done, and there's those fine margins. But I think that shift in narrative really helps the confidence at the club and how people view the season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you talk about fine margins, and again, I do actually apologise for taking it back to last season again, but it seemed that was a theme as well. If this can add, if we should have won this, should have won this game. If that hadn't happened, I suppose the hope is that then being able to shift that narrative is that these fine margins. I mean, I think Hibs will probably feel that they're due, that some of them start going in their favour rather than against, I would imagine.
But it's the thing about, like, they all even out over the course of the season. So I think the way that our luck has been, pretty much from here on in, we're in for a cushy ride.
Several years of it.
It's all backed up. We're due it at some point. I think that there's definitely an element of that. I think we spoke about it to see whether to shift that perception that we're susceptible to losing late goals, do we need to have like a 1-0 and ride a couple out? And so people kind of get that confidence back. But I actually think having a game like Saturdays is better for it, where we're not in any danger. We're so comfortable in the game, even though St Johnstone started pushing forward a wee bit towards the end. They never really looked like scoring. I think we were totally comfortable, and we're almost at the point where you were relaxed. If they did get a goal, I didn't think we were going to concede a second one. And I think that's the more we play like that, the more people forget about, we're a team that concedes late goals. And we start to shift away from that perception and just kind of get in our stride a wee bit.
Yeah, that'll take a bit of time, I suppose. But do you feel that there's maybe a bit more defensive solidity that contributed to that last weekend? I think certainly maybe in the last couple of league games, Warren Hora and Marvin Ekpiteta have looked a bit more cohesive. And then you've got the two in front of them, especially on Saturday there, Kwon, Triantis. It adds an extra layer, doesn't it? Which is maybe something that's not always been there, an extra layer of protection.
Yeah, definitely. I think we restricted St Johnstone to one shot on target, and that was from outside the box, where you'd probably quite happy seeing a team taking shots from. I think Ekpiteta in particular stood out on Saturday. He came into focus early in the season because of a couple of high-profile mistakes, but if you took those mistakes out of those games, he'd actually performed quite well. And so if you sort of rationalise it, saying he's not going to make those mistakes game after game, then you've got a pretty good defender on your hands. And I think that's what we've seen the last couple of games with Ekpiteta. He's not had the mistakes that have been punished, and he's played well defensively, and everybody's kind of taken a wee step back and going, actually, he's pretty good. And that partnership that he's getting with Ahora is growing week to week as well. I think Ahora had a really good game on Saturday. Very understated in the way that he went about his business. He wasn't quite as obviously good as Ekpiteta was, but he played well. And definitely having Kwon and Chiantis in front of them is a bit of a game changer, because there's not. I think last season, if a team got past our midfield, they were through on goal almost. That was how it went. Whereas now they're not getting through our midfield as easily, and when they're sort of faced with Ekpiteta and Ahora, so they're definitely looking better defensively.
Yeah, I think we did actually. We wrote about this. I think it was after the Kilmarnock game, just the sort of changing profile of the team, and like I mean that literally, like physically. Hibs are a big side now, aren't they? Like it certainly looks different in that regard. They seem more equipped for that side of things. I mean, you have Kwon, Triantis, both 6 foot plus, Ahora, Ekpiteta, Kugarevich up front. You know, obviously Kieran Bowie's a big lad as well. It's a different. And I don't just mean this in terms of how they play. It's just even physically, it's a very different looking team, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a team like that. I've actually just been listening to an audiobook called How to Win the Premier League, which is all about data analysis. And one of the last chapters in that, they're talking about the advantage that height gives you in games, in particular at set pieces, where sort of skill becomes less prevalent and physical attributes become more. And we saw that on Saturday, where the opening goal comes from a free kick to the back post, and Ekpiteta wins the knockdown for Kugarevich to knock in. So I think Hibs have long had a reputation for being sort of a bit of a soft team and not really up for the physical battle. But I think when teams come out, even when they sort of, when they walk out the tunnel, when you look to the, your left or right, and you see the opposition team, if it's all like Land of the Giants, then it can be a wee bit intimidating. I think it's quite good to have that in your locker.
Yeah, I mean, is this part of the shift that Malky Mackay's spoken about, David Gray spoken about, or even Ian Gordon in those interviews that he did, in the recruitment focus being more on Scottish football expertise? Are they playing to what is required in this league now? Is this are we seeing that in practice with this kind of change in physical profile of the team?
I think so. I think this was quite a high priority thing for Hibs, was to almost kind of go back to basics. I think the lessons that they learned from Maloney and Montgomery, who tried to play the really slow, patient pass out for the back approach, which was really ineffective. Even, in fact, going back to Heckingbottom, who tried similar. I think that recognition that you have to be really, really good to do it in Scotland. Celtic can do it because they pay millions for players, but Hibs struggle to do it. So having like a bit more of a direct approach, or being up for the physical battle, and the cliche about win the fight before you can play football. Maybe that's why our first halves aren't that great. I think maybe that is a deliberate thing.
There was certainly an element of that in the Kilmarnock game. I felt the first half was. I mean, it was kind of painful to watch at times from just from the side. But in terms of, I think, in that game, I thought you could see a clear, right, we need to match them physically. We need to win this battle. And then I think in the second half, Hibs' quality came through a wee bit more. Because so I think you're probably spot on in what you're saying there, that there is an element of trying to win that battle first. And then there is some quality players in that team, and then letting them come to the fore as the game goes on, really.
Yeah, I think so. It's a good place to be, because I think we have options to be different if we want to. It goes back to that strength and depth. So if we didn't want to go with the big lads, you can. There are sort of more skillful players, if you like, that can come in and take positions. But I think for now we will probably see the big guys out more often than not, and I think that's probably the way to be effective in this league. If you look at the teams that have been successful outside of Celtic and Rangers in the league, that's a characteristic of their teams. They all are physical, and they win that battle first before they kind of do the other parts of it. So I think it's about time Hibs got on board with that.
Yeah, well, it certainly seems to be heading that way. As you said, no game this weekend, but after that, it's a tough test. Hibs heading down to Ibrox to play Rangers. Back at Ibrox, Rangers this weekend after spending the first few weeks of the season at Hampden. But just Hibs put out a statement last night, just basically saying that they're still awaiting away ticket information, because I think the case for Rangers this weekend is they are back at Ibrox playing Dundee in the Premier Sports Cup, but I don't think the stadium is fully open, and obviously that, if it's not quite fully open for next week's game against Hibs, that has obvious implications for travelling supporters. I'll just read out Hibs' statement quickly for anybody who's not seen it. It just says, Hibernian FC continues to have detailed conversations with the SPFL and Rangers regarding away tickets for the Premiership match on Sunday, 29th of September. Due to the ongoing maintenance at Ibrox, away ticket information is yet to be provided as Rangers go through the final stages of work to the Copland Road stand. With the match now just 10 days away as of yesterday, the clubs are working through a formal procedure with the SPFL to determine further information regarding away supporters. The club hopes to receive more details from the SPFL and Rangers early next week. I think basically, I mean, just from a travelling fan perspective, it's no ideal, that is it really, to be in the dark.
It's a shambles, yeah. I know that the folk have got like the Hibs First membership who normally have their tickets by now. They're still not able to make plans. And I don't know if it's even in doubt that it'll go ahead at Ibrox, or if it's definitely going ahead there and they're just not sure if they're going to be able to let fans in, because I suppose they also won't have room for their own season ticket holders if they're not able to open that stand. Yeah. So I get it's a complex situation, but I think the easy answer would have been to have another game at Hampden. And we could have went through there. I mean, I wouldn't have minded it being at Hampden because our recent record against Rangers at Hampden is pretty good, but certainly much better than it is at Ibrox. So.
It's a good point, actually. Maybe that's why they didn't want it at Hampden.
It wouldn't have been a disaster, definitely. But I feel for the folk who would be desperate to get a ticket, because I think even if we get them, it's probably going to be reduced numbers. And it's not a great look. I think clubs need to do more to put fans first, and if you're not able to make an early decision on it, then make alternative arrangements.
Yeah, because I mean, folk have got to get travel sorted. There'll be supporters buses and all that. It just kind of throws people's plans into, puts them up in the air, really. So hopefully, Hibs did say in the statement, as I said, that the club hopes to receive more details from the SPFL and Rangers early next week. I understand that's still too late for really, but again, the hope is that that it'll be cleared up and there'll be at least some Hibs fans. I think there was a story in one of the papers today, forgive me, that I can't remember what it was, that said there is a small risk that there'll be no away fans permitted, but they are working to try and make sure that doesn't happen. So I suppose it's just one of those, we have to wait and see. But yeah, not ideal from a Hibs fan perspective, and a bit of a pain in the neck for supporters who are looking to get travel arranged. But I mean, that is Hibs returning to action next week, and we'll be previewing that game as we build into it. Just before we go, folks, we're coming up to a year since we launched the Hibs Observer, which feels a bit mad to say that. It's really kind of flown in over the past year. So just over the weekend, building into that anniversary, we're just going to be resharing some of our best pieces of work from over the past year, features, interviews, and everything in between. And then next week we'll have some special content to mark, new exclusive content to mark that anniversary. So do keep an eye on our social media channels. Over the weekend, we'll be sharing plenty of stuff on there from over the past year, and then, as I said, the new stuff into next year. So for anybody who has subscribed over the past year, we really, really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. And if you haven't got involved yet, you can get involved via the offer at the bottom of our screen there. But as I said, a big week for us next week, celebrating 1 year of the Hibs Observer. So going to leave it there for now, folks. Matty, thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for being a part of it over the past year. I hope it's been as enjoyable for you as it has for us having you on. And as I said, that'll do us for this week, folks. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do consider hitting the subscribe button to help us continue to grow the channel. But on top of that, just have a good weekend. We'll be back with sort of more regular videos from next week onwards. I know the volume of content has been down a wee bit. It's just been a combination of factors, holidays, conflicting schedules and whatnot. But we'll be back at it more frequently from next week onwards. So do join us then. And as I said, have a very good weekend, and we'll see you all again soon. Cheers.